Evolution's really stepped up its game in Neo Discovery, where we got 2 versions of Espeon and 2 versions of Umbreon. Now, the holo rares of each of these Pokemon are extraordinarily useful. I discussed both of these cards in my Neo Discovery video, but here's a quick refresher. With Espeon, you got a free retreating 80 HP Stage 1 Pokemon with a decent initial attack, but the bread and butter is going to be in Psychic, where you could punish your opponent for stacking lots of energy on their Pokemon, which was very common in Neo On. In Umbreon, we get another 80 HP Stage 1. It does have 1 retreat cost, but it's got a resistance to Psychic, so it can actually cover Espeon's weakness. Much like Espeon, the main draw of this card is in its secondary attack, Feint Attack, in which you can snipe for 30 damage. In a format that has babies and low HP basics all over the place, this is great. Potentially game-breaking if paired with something like Murkrow that can trap your opponent's active in the active position while you just switch into Umbreon and continuously snipe the bench, if not for the attack cost that requires 2 special energy cards, of which you can only have 4 in your deck. And to assist in this deck, we got a pretty good Eevee whose power is its own form of acceleration, as whenever you attach an energy to it, you flip a coin, and if heads, you can search your deck for an evolution card that's the same type as that energy and evolve Eevee straight away. This makes the deck very efficient, very fast, and very powerful, so Espeon and Umbreon are very early game threats that have to be dealt with, because a lot of decks are going to be dealing with baby Pokemon as part of their setup, and so Umbreon is going to be able to get those OHKOs. Alternatively, if your opponent is loading energy onto one of their Pokemon, be it on the bench or the active position, it's going to be very easy to get it into the active position and punish those energy with Espeon. So it should be pretty clear why these 2 cards work very well together. Let's get into what the actual deck list looks like. Of course, the base of your Evolutions deck is going to be Eevee, the Neo Discovery Eevee that we talked about before. Unfortunately, in Neo On, you could not use the promo Eevee anymore, but this one is still a solid option for all the reasons we talked about in the intro. Just attaching an energy gives you the opportunity to potentially evolve straight into whichever evolution you want to, depending on the type of energy you've attached. I'm going to be using 3 copies of that Discovery Holo Espeon, as it's a little more usable than the Umbreon since it doesn't require any special energy on it, but the Umbreon is a little bit better despite that flaw, so we're also going to be using 2 copies of the Umbreon. Hopefully you're not going to end up with either of these prized, but you do run the risk, and the point of this deck is to get one of these cards out as quickly as possible, have that 80 HP Stage 1 as an early threat, but if you got both Umbreon prized, then you can't do much, so you can go ahead and run maybe like a 3-3 evolution line on both of those, but then you get into territory where it doesn't make a whole lot of sense having 6 evolution cards off of 4 basics. If you do get held up a bit, and you can't really hit those coin flips and evolve quickly, you do have Pichu and Cleffa running 2 copies of each in this deck to help you along. Pichu is just a staple in any deck that doesn't rely on Pokemon powers, because it's a huge threat to any deck that does utilize them. And then the 2 Cleffa are in here just in case you do need that extra setup time, but only running 2 copies in here because usually it's not needed. You can start the game with an Eevee and be perfectly fine for the most part. You know, if you miss the first coin flip, then you might have to rethink things a little bit, but other than that, you are pretty comfortable no matter what your start is in this game, because Pichu's got free retreat, Cleffa's got free retreat, so you can get back into that Eevee easily whenever you need to. Since we're only running 2 Cleffa, we are a little heavier on draw and search support, so you're going to see 3 copies of Professor Elm and 4 copies of Pokemon Fan Club. It's going to be very important to get those basics onto your bench so that you can start attaching energy, evolving as quickly as possible, and getting into the actual strategy of this deck. Copycat is also going to help with that, a full playset of that. Between Copycat and Elm, you're not really going to have to rely on the Cleffa. They're almost in the deck more as a metagame formality. But Pichu and Cleffa both can serve as pretty good stall cards. You throw a focus band onto those baby Pokemon, let them stall for as long as possible while you get perhaps another Espeon or Umbreon set up on the bench, after your active has been knocked out. 3 copies of Town Volunteers, because it's going to be important to get those EVs back if they do get knocked out. Same for Power Charge. Got a full playset of Power Charge in this deck, because once you lose those darkness energies, it's pretty difficult to get them back and power up the Umbreons, and so Power Charge is going to be your main way of doing that. In Neo 1, you don't have to worry as much about them getting discarded, but you do have to attach 2 just to use Feint Attack, so if one Umbreon gets knocked out, you're really going to want those darkness energies back. 4 copies of Double Gust, that way you can make sure the Pokemon you want to use Feint Attack on stays on your opponent's bench and is not a threat to the active Umbreon. Kind of the same thing for Espeon. If your opponent is just powering up a benched Pokemon to avoid Espeon's attack, then Double Gust that thing into the active position. Like I said, Pichu and Cleffa both have free retreat, so it's pretty simple to swap those out and then retreat right back into your Espeon and use Psychic to punish the overload of energy your opponent may be playing. And the rest of the deck gets pretty tool focused, as this is pretty much a toolbox Umbreon Espeon deck. So you got a full playset of Goldberry to help heal off that damage, keep them at full health. Focus Band for your baby Pokemon, but also EVs. If they are missing those coin flips, not able to evolve right away, your draw power isn't getting the evolutions into your hand. And then finally Balloon Berry, which is going to help you on those Double Gusts a little more for your Umbreons. You know, you Double Gust and you have to maybe pull out an Umbreon that isn't quite ready to attack, but you want to retreat it right back to the bench for maybe a fully powered Espeon. Balloon Berry is going to make that possible without having to sacrifice any of those darkness energies. And then of course we're going to round out the deck with a full play set of darkness energy and then 10 psychic energy. And all in all, it's a pretty straightforward deck. You evolve Eevee as quickly as possible, start attacking as quickly as possible, attach the tools when needed, and, you know, depending on what you're facing, switch between Espeon and Umbreon and attack. The core of this deck is so simple that it leaves a lot of room for interpretation and adaptation to your personal playstyle. If you don't want the backup draw support, then you can cut the Cleffa entirely, because Eevee's plenty fast on its own at getting its setup done pretty quickly. And when you've got a lot of Dark Crobat and damage spread decks going around, you don't really want to have a baby on your bench anyway. You can also play around a lot with the Pokemon tools in this deck. If that's not quite your style, you don't like the rotating utility of having all these cards in your hand, you can replace them with other tool cards or just other trainers that match your style a little more, like maybe a couple copies of Oracle. If you don't want to rely as much on Power Charge, you can include 4 copies of Rainbow Energy. It's going to be dealing 10 damage to your Umbreons, but at the same time, you're going to probably be able to heal that off with Goldberry if used strategically. Alternatively, you also have Porygon 2, which makes its way into a lot of evolution decks, particularly ones that use more than 2 types of energy, as its ability basically lets you convert a basic energy card into a rainbow energy card. On that note, it's worth mentioning that you do have some decent coverage options in Light Jolteon, as well as the Jungle Jolteon and Flareon that were reprinted in the Legendary Collection. You also have Light Flareon, Light Vaporeon, and Dark Vaporeon available as options, but they don't fit the deck very well, even as coverage options really. And that is my general build for Espeon Umbreon. Let me know what changes you would make. Let me know your favorite way to run these cards, or even a Neon Evolutions deck. Social media links are in the description. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.